Bodog poll question today. We're asking you, will Bo Horvat score 50 goals this season? Yes or no? You can vote at Carson Price on Twitter. Free casino games, poker tips, sports odds. Time to play at Bodog.net. Bodog line of the day from me. You know, that playoff bye in the CFL can be a blessing and a curse, particularly if you're playing before a paltry home crowd. What, about 15,000 at BMO for the Argos in the East Final? Against an Alouettes team that looked really good in the semi. They jumped on Hamilton early and they didn't let up. So I'm going to take Montreal +3. Pull for the upset or for a tight game on your Bodog line of the day. Joining us now, our Wednesday regular from the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, TSN Hockey Insider, Mr. Darren Dreger. How you doing?
I'm doing well, fellas. How are you?
Doing good. Quite well. Boy, has this marketing team kept you busy this year. Saw insider trading yesterday, Darren, and for those who missed it, if you just can give us what you reported yesterday in light of Jim Rutherford going on local radio here and skewering his head coach again.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly stirred it up again, and Jim Rutherford's views of the deficiencies in the game of the Vancouver Canucks really haven't changed now for several months, maybe since Rutherford arrived in Vancouver as part of their executive group. Look, most of what I touched on isn't new per se. The only thing new about it is how the temperature is rising as you get deeper into the regular season. So I believe that what the Vancouver Canucks are considering are a couple of things. If you make a coaching change and you promote someone or you hire outside and that individual comes in and, the team starts winning through desperation as it did under Bruce a year or so ago, is that in the best interest of the organization? And automatically you think of the June draft, right? 2023. And it's not just Connor Bedard and Mishkov, Fantilli. I mean, that's a terrific draft class in 2023. So if you're not going into some sort of rebuild, how about a renovation? So I think that management of the Vancouver Canucks is toying with that scenario. But there's also another part to this. So if you wait and you go deeper into the season, into the new year, January, February, whenever it is, and you decide, okay, well, now let's make the coaching change because we also want the person that we're bringing in to have enough time to create the identity that we want, but to also introduce that structure, the systems that we keep hearing from Jim Rutherford, so that by the time you get into the start of next season, you've hit the ice in full flight. And there might also be a concern from the organization as to the impact that is happening on the young NHL players that are still developing with the Vancouver Canucks by not making the change. So a lot of it continues to point directly at Bruce Boudreau and coaching.
Do you know what he's trying to achieve, though, when he says these things about the structure and all that publicly? Like, we were sitting here yesterday wondering if it's such a problem, like, how is it not being handled between the two of them? How is it not?
Especially, Darren, because it's not the first time, right? We heard him say that at the end of the last season. We heard him say that after
Multiple
the
times.
opening night loss. So I guess people are wondering, is he talking to the owner indirectly? Is he talking to the coach directly? Is he talking to the players? Because if he's talking to the coach, he has the agency to do something about it.
Yeah, no question about that. And frankly, I don't believe that there will be ownership interference. If Patrick Galvin and Jim Rutherford decide that Bruce's time in Vancouver is over, it's over. And, I've been among the chorus of people who have said, well, maybe the apprehension of making the change is because Vancouver doesn't want to be on the books for three coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got Travis, you've got Bruce, and then you're hiring somebody. And my understanding is that that's not the case. What I would say is this. For Bruce Boudreau to go on Vancouver radio, for Jimmy Rutherford to go on Vancouver radio and reiterate in a rather forceful manner, I would say, what he has said all along now for several months. He is not doing that publicly unless he's had that very conversation with Bruce Boudreau or Patrick Galvin has had that conversation with Bruce Boudreau. They're just not seeing the results, and not just the on-ice results, but the practice habits. Again, one of the things that lifted off that interview for me was Rutherford talking about how they just failed to prepare for a 5-game road trip. There was no extra drive. There was no extra attention spent to detail. Well, you're putting your players in a real difficult spot. At the end of the day, we always say, look, it's up to the players on the ice to execute. So the blame has to be put there. But if they're not being coached and the systems aren't being reinforced and the structure isn't being reinforced, as Rutherford implies, then that's an organizational problem, right? Because not only is the coach not doing what you want to do or him to do, which you think is going to make the team better, but he's also not listening to management who keep coming back and saying the same thing over and over again.
How big a problem, and we say this with air quotes around it, how big a problem is Bo Horvat? Because he's so darn good. With all this losing, without a contract for next year, is this a weird kind of headache for the organization to have at this moment?
It could be, Blake, but maybe you can look at it the other way. It's a good problem if you want to call it a problem, because you're going to do one of two things with Bo. You're either going to trade him and get decent value in return, obviously based on the way he's playing, or you're going to find ways to shed cap space with other players as you maybe creep closer to the March 3rd trade deadline. And then you create the space and you create the reasoning behind offering Bo Horvat the extension at that point. Is he going to want it? Is he going to take it? Again, that's part of the negotiating. But I honestly don't think that Vancouver looks at it as being problematic. And credit to Bo Horvat, because not every player, Ray Ferraro reminds us of this whenever we ask, right? He always talks about how contract years, he didn't like it. He stressed out about it, right?
Yep.
And lots of players are like that. But Horvat seems to be thriving, at least in the moment. He's doing what he has to do, and that's play his best to make the Vancouver Canucks better. And, whether it's easy or not, he's clearly shelving some of the distraction, but I don't think it's going to be a problem moving forward for the Canucks.
If you're Canuck management, do you have to, if you're considering trading Bo Horvat at any point this season, do you not have to start fishing now a little bit while the iron is hot, even though you'd love his services for another few months, but then you'd be playing the bet that he can continue this pace for those few months? If you're going to do it, should you do it? Should you start throwing the bait over the edge of the boat now to see what's going?
Well, to follow your analogy, I think the lines have been in the water for a while. And that's not to say that Horvat is on the trade block. Don't misinterpret that. But look, I know what the buzz was like. It was around JT Miller at the draft, and obviously the Canucks didn't get the value that they expected in JT Miller, and they engage in a conversation. And you end up with a contract extension. They would have had those same conversations with Bo Horvat going into the season in terms of teams that may have expressed interest, or they're just trying to get a feel for what that market looks like. So whether or not those conversations have been ongoing, probably not, because you also don't want to disrupt the start of the season or kind of interrupt whatever momentum you might have. But given, the trials and tribulations here of the Vancouver Canucks, I'd be surprised, even though it's early, if teams haven't at least kicked tires.
Boudreau said yesterday he's not going to get into a debate about structure. You think the Canucks front office is at all worried that this could get even uglier publicly if Bruce decided to keep firing back?
Well, no, it probably won't.
I'm just wondering if Bruce has it from Boudreau's shoes here, Dregs. What does he have to lose? This is probably his last NHL gig, right? And he's got a lot of friends in media as well.
He does, yes.
Does he go quietly into the night, just sitting there and taking lump after lump about a structure, or does he fire back at some point?
Yeah, I mean, that's all plausible. I just know having a conversation with Bruce Boudreau when he first got the job in Vancouver, how elated he was, right? And all the interviews he talked about how he was basically willing to coach at any level. He just wanted to get back coaching, so it's been such a big part of his life for so many years. I'd be surprised if he went out swinging, because he probably still feels healthy enough and feels like he can contribute as a coach at some level or within another organization moving forward. And if it happens relatively soon, then you still have a fair chunk of this season. Maybe there's another opportunity elsewhere. So you don't really want to poison the well. But I'll tell you guys, we had a quiz question as part of our regional coverage last night of the Leafs and the Vegas Golden Knights. And it asked whether or not we felt like Bruce Boudreau was on thick ice, thin ice, or cracked ice. And my first response early in the morning was thin ice, and then I changed it later in the day to cracked ice. And I did my reporting on insider trading. So that gives you an indication. I don't think that it's in Bruce's best interest at this point to poke the bear.
Marvelous stuff, Darren. We thank you for this. Have a great week. We'll catch up next Wednesday.
All right, guys. Be well. Thank you.